Hello, this is a video on perfect encryption. My name is Michael Anders. I'm a physicist and professor at the University of Applied Sciences in Wedel. This is the agenda. First, I'm going to talk about what is negligible adversary advantage. Then about adversary advantage in traditional hybrid ciphers. About the risks of using adversary advantage ciphers. And a chapter on how we can achieve negligible adversary advantage in hybrid ciphers. I will give a summary and conclusion and a demonstration of a practical negligible adversary advantage hybrid cipher. Let's start. What is adversary advantage? Let's assume we have a plaintext and another file of true random numbers. We are going to encipher the plaintext with a perfect symmetric cipher and will obtain random looking data that is in size as large as the other file of random looking data, which are true random numbers. Now let's forget about we got these two files, and let's assume we are now in the position of an adversary. We have a look at these two files and we have to decide which one is the cipher file. What does zero adversary advantage mean? It means we cannot guess which data are the cipher file data, and the probability for guessing right with a cipher, which one is the cipher, is the same as guessing wrong with the random data, which one is the random data file. Both are exactly 0.5, 1/2, and the absolute value of the difference is called adversary advantage, and it is 0 in this case. In practice, the adversary, we, the I, can try some keys, decipher, and look at what we deciphered. If it looks like garbage, then we can exclude that this key in conjunction with this random looking file is the cipher data. So the probability for correctly recognizing the cipher data is insignificantly larger than 0.5. We'll pick the other one. Thus, the advantage is a little larger than 0, but it's still negligible, and therefore we call it negligible adversary advantage. We consider such ciphers which show negligible adversary advantage and which only present the difference from 0 as the result of brute forcing. We consider such ciphers as secure. Colloquially, we could express it like it's expressed here. No adversary, not knowing the key, can tell cipher data and true noise apart in a secure cipher. This is again a depiction of the concept. The adversary has to decide between two files of random looking data, has to decide which one is the cipher file, can begin to guess for a limited number of times, and so can move away from exactly 0 to some insignificant number, and we can then say, if it's impossible to decide, this is a negligible adversary advantage cipher. The security criterion, in this case the indistinguishability from true random data, is generally accepted for symmetric ciphers. Now we'll have a look at two practical, free, open source tools for asymmetric encryption. The first example is GnuPG. You can find it in the internet if you Google, for example, for open source public key encryption. This is the logo of this tool. It is using RSA and El-Jamal as default for the asymmetric part of its hybrid encryption scheme, and it adheres to the OpenPGP standard. The other sample, the other example, is the tool academic signature. You can find it if you Google, for example, open source elliptic curve cryptography or open source elliptic curve encryption. This is the logo of this program. It's an image of an elliptic curve, and this tool uses elliptic curve El-Gamal as default for the asymmetric part of its hybrid encryption scheme. Now let's first look at the GnuPG sample ciphertext. I encrypted a precursor of a paper describing the contents of this video, and this is the result. We can look at it at an editor. I just used the default settings of GnuPG and encrypted the file with for my own public key. And it starts with begin PGP message, and it identifies itself as GnuPG version 2 cipher. And then we see here radix 64 coding. I cut out the middle part in order to have it fit and so that we can still read it. And it ends with in bold end PGP message. So what can we see? We see radix 64 encoding. The cipher identifies itself and also marks its end. We have additional content info in radix 64 in the header. Without cryptographic protection, we cannot read it because few people can read radix 64, but it contains the ID of the recipient's key. This can be suppressed, but usually default it's not. It contains an octet number specifying the public key algorithm used. It contains a packet type version number, and it contains, of course, the long number that serves as input for the symmetric key recovery routine. We can have a look at these if we just look up RC 4880. There it's described in detail. You could also select to have the output not in radix 64 but in a full ASCII, but still the same information is contained there. We can conclude the standard, and in fact any GnuPG cipher file or OpenPGP cipher file has adversary advantage 1. It is obvious and easy to distinguish it from a noise file, from a random file. Second example. This is a cipher file of the same precursor of this paper that I used for the OpenPGP sample. In this case, it's an academic signature sample ciphertext. I view it in a hex editor, ghex. It's not important which one. So if we have a look at it, we see again a plain text header, and this time in pure ASCII, human readable. It first states the key ID as _256K1, domain name P256I, and it's an elliptic curve domain from ECC Brainpool. Then we have two coordinates of a point in the plane BX and BY, 256 bit deep. And then we have the specification of the algorithm. In this case, it's Chimera. And then the header has an end marker, capital X, colon, and then this is this position, and then it starts with a cipher, which again looks like pure noise since it is a valid symmetric cipher. So let me summarize. We have a clear text header and ASCII. We have a key ID given in the clear. We have the elliptic curve domain name given in the clear. We have coordinates of point B in the plane given in the clear. We have the name of the symmetric algorithm, Chimera in this case, given in the plane. And we can find the format, the full format specification at this web address where this format is described. Again, this is adversary advantage 1. The adversary can easily distinguish this data object from noise data if it starts with KID colon and then some name string, you know it's a academic signature cipher. So there's a common saying, negligible adversary advantage is not possible with practical public key ciphertexts. This brings some dangers with it. At first, repudiation of encrypted communication is impossible if you use these hybrid cipher files. This image shows an older print of a technique called waterboarding that has come to some fame in the recent years in the US. If you cannot deny having encrypted communication and you are caught in a nation where this state agency leaders want access to a plain text that you did in Cipher, then you may face what is called enhanced interrogation techniques to extort this from you, and this is unpleasant. Next danger. This is a picture of the NSA facility in Bluffdale in Utah. This is a place where presumably almost all internet traffic they can get hold of is stored, and they can get hold of almost any internet traffic. So let's assume someone as powerful as the NSA is the adversary, and it governs the internet basically and can vacuum up all data that are going through all cables on Earth. What can they do? They watch it and they take care to not miss any ciphertext. The presumed default action, if they encounter any ciphertext, is they collect it. Well, in human English language, collected, they have different definitions of what collecting means. They collect it, they classify the cipher, they index it, and store it in a database. There could be different types of encrypted files. There's a simple MS Office encryption. If you encrypt a Word document or an Excel sheet, you can have encrypted zip files. You can have commercial chat tools that encrypt the chats. You can have a company virtual private network data that are encrypted. You can have HTTPS traffic that's encrypted. You have what I call safe open source chats with encrypted chat content. You can have OpenPGP files. You can have other cipher files, for example, from other nation-state agencies, KGB, FSB, German BND, whatever. And it could be looking like noise, possibly be a cipher, possibly be a one-time pad. So it can be something unknown that doesn't show any pattern. Now, let's look at the presumed action upon agent request. Some agent in the NSA says, this is interesting for me, this comes from a source I'm observing. So what is the presumed action if the agent requests closer info about this encrypted data that go over the net? If it's MS Office encryption, it's probably real-time decryption. It's weak encryption, and so they can just decrypt it in real time. Same for encrypted zip files. They are poorly password protected. There's no good key derivation function. Could be commercial chat tools. It's probably easy to decrypt. They have probably backdoors in place. They won't tell it, but probably they are. It could be company virtual private network traffic. There's a good chance they can decrypt it in real time, that they can launch man-in-the-middle attacks from some Snowden documents. It can be seen that they have a failure rate about 30%. and about 70%, probably, as we know today, probably because most people use the same primes and they have put a lot of effort in preparing calculations for these primes. Probably they can decrypt on the fly about 70% of company virtual private network traffic. It might be HTTPS traffic, the same applies to this. They have a certain success rate and they can try real-time decrypt. You can have safe open source chats, which they cannot decrypt right now. They might try, reject for now, but store classified and stored in the database for later analysis, maybe with more resources nowadays, or maybe they store it for another attempt in, let's say, 5 or 10 years. Same with OpenPGP. They will probably fail right now, at least with GnuPG. In commercial products, there might be backdoors in place. They can try decrypting it. Probably they won't succeed right now, but they'll store it for some time to come when they can, or when they assume they will be able to decrypt it. It could be other traffic. They can again try to decrypt, reject for now, but collect, classify, index, and store. If it's unknown, adhering to no pattern, actually they can't do anything. They can store it, but they don't have any info on what to do with it later on, so probably they're just going to discard it and reject it. This is a very important advantage in this context of a facility like this one, a large advantage of patternless cipher files, which do not presently, as to my knowledge, do not presently exist. So let's look at the third danger. Quantum computing might be around the corner, and there's a certain consensus among experts that we will have practical quantum computing within 2, 3, maybe 4 decades. People are already working on it. Some claim they have achieved quantum computing for maybe 2, 3, 4, 10 qubits. We need more than that, and it needs to be practical, and it needs to have good interfaces to conventional computing. Anyhow, the consensus is it will be here in, let's say, 25 years. If quantum computing is practical and large budget organizations like the NSA own a quantum computer, they can use Shor's algorithm to calculate discrete logarithms in a very short time. And if they know your public key and they own a practical quantum computer, they can factor your RSA module, calculate the discrete logarithm of your public El-Gamal key, or your public ECC key, and thus recover your private key, can impersonate you, read all your enciphered documents, and so on. So this essentially would break hybrid and asymmetric cryptography as we know it today. Most methods that we know today. Currently, cryptographers are searching for algorithms and are evaluating different algorithms as to whether they can resist quantum computing and whether they are practical and whether they are conventionally secure and so on. But the ones we use nowadays will all be broken. So if your adversary knows the private key and the ciphertext header, we had a look at headers, some view graphs before, the adversary, example the NSA, GCHQ, can readily decipher whatever you encipher, whatever is enciphered for you. If it's hybrid ciphers or asymmetric ciphers. There's another algorithm that can also be used to be a little better in attacking symmetric ciphers, but this can be easily warded off if you just double key size. If you double key size, you have the same security level as before. So Grover's algorithm, which can be used to attack symmetric algorithms, is not such a strong threat as Shor's algorithm for public key cryptography as we use it today. So this is another threat. If quantum computing gets practical, we are broke. Let me talk about a fourth danger with adversary advantage 1 hybrid ciphers, the usual ones, the conventional ones. We have some intransparent information leakage. Most people know that there is information flow due to metadata. Metadata have been in the discussion for some time, or let's also call it external data. When was the ciphertext sent? When was it intercepted? By what channel was it sent? Who sent it? Who is the recipient? You can even read out the recipient from the key ID if it's a cipher. When was it received? How long is the ciphertext? This is all external data, metadata. Those data are easily visible to the user and to the sender or receiver, and they are usually aware of this. They may decide to obfuscate this, or they may decide not to do that, but they are aware of it. But any additional information leaks that are buried in the ciphertext itself should be avoided. Most users will not be aware of them. Most users are not aware of the fact that their public key ID is part of the cipher file. If you look into forum discussions on the internet, you can find that many people think they can conceal that they're using encrypted communication. If you're using OpenPGP or PGP mail traffic, everyone can see that you are doing this. So additional information leaks buried in a ciphertext should clearly be avoided, like these leaks in this war. Now what can we do? We should challenge the common saying. The common saying is you cannot achieve negligible adversary advantage in a hybrid cipher. And let's just ask, how can we achieve negligible adversary advantage in practical ciphers? It doesn't exist yet, to my knowledge, but how can we achieve it anyways? I can envision two variants. I call the first one the fundamentalist approach. We'll have a look at it in a few seconds. And the second one, I call the second one the evolutionary approach. Let's first have a look at the fundamentalist approach. First, the communicating group of friends, project group, whatever. First, the group agrees on a negligible adversary advantage symmetric algorithm. This is easy since this is a criterion for symmetric algorithms. So the ones that do not have this property are probably discarded. Well, some are kept since we love them, but usually they fulfill this requirement. And then we decide on a mode, for example, cipher blockchaining. You could also use counter mode or whatever. And you possibly also agree on a precisely defined key derivation procedure with lots of stretching and sorting, and a key derivation function which has a high memory footprint and takes some while to digest the human memorizable keyword to a true enhanced key. This is how this is done, if it's done properly. And then you have to exchange keys in a conspirative get-together. You meet in the woods and pass around a chit of edible paper with the keys written on it. The advantage is beautiful simplicity. Disadvantage is error tolerance. If decryption fails for whatever reason, radioactive decay in your memory, for example, there's absolutely no clue why it failed. On the other hand, there shouldn't be any. This is the basics of cryptography. If you do not succeed, if anything fails, you should not have a single bit of information why it did fail. So this is okay. In case you have to migrate to another algorithm because the one you are using is cracked, then this is a nightmarish organizational challenge to change this algorithm or change the key derivation procedure if this becomes necessary. You have absolutely no algorithm agility. This is the keyword that's used nowadays for this. So you have to pick the strongest ones available today, the strongest symmetric algorithms and the strongest key derivation functions you can get hold of. And this has a disadvantage. The strongest ones will usually not be the fastest ones. They might be somewhat slow, and you have to apply it to long data files. You might want to encrypt 2 gigabytes of video or whatever, and then it takes quite a while, and you have to use the slow ones with a gigantic security margin, because changing algorithm or key derivation function would be such a nightmare. Yeah, the caveat is negligible algorithm agility. You can have some partial facilitation. You can make algorithm and key derivation specification part of the key. Well, this is good in one sense, but on the other on the other hand side, you get as a consequence bloated keys. You cannot scribble it on a piece of edible paper with, let's say, 10 characters or so and pass it around. You have to exchange thumb drives, and this is more dangerous. And so fundamentalism and simplicity are gone, and so I crossed out the fundamentalist approach logo. It's doable, but it's more complicated. Now let's look at the version I call the evolutionary approach. The group has to get together and agree on a negligible adversary advantage symmetric algorithm and use it in a finalizing step to encipher the plain cipher header only. Only the cipher header, a short snippet of remaining plain text, 1 block or 2 blocks or so, and just use it on this small part. The rest of everything you do as you did before, a normal hybrid cipher, but the hybrid cipher has a plain header, a short snippet of plain header, and you only use the methods to encipher the plain header. You can think of 2 variants. Let's call one variant variant A. You agree on a method to derive the finalizing symmetric key, the one that's just used for the plain header, from the public key of the recipient. And then you keep the public key sort of semi-public, confidential against external, confidential within the group that is communicating, the group of friends that is communicating. Variant B, you agree on a method to derive the key from a human memorizable keyword using ample sorting and stretching. You keep the finalizing keyword confidential against externals, confidential within the group, confidential among the communicating group of friends. I have a certain naming for this. I call the additional cryptographic protection of the initially plain cipher header a NADA cap. Stands for no access data available, and cap because it's a cap you can't look through. I call variant A intrinsic NADA capping. Intrinsic means you derive the finalizing symmetric key from the public key somehow. You have to agree on how, but somehow. And I call variant B extrinsic because you have an external symmetric keyword. This is extrinsic NADA capping. Now let's evaluate it. What is the advantage? You have full flexibility in selecting the workhorse algorithm and the mode. which means you can have options, you can use a fast one. It's no problem, you can do it as before. The finalizing algorithm, the one you're using just for capping, need not be fast and can have extreme security margin. Maybe slow, it doesn't matter, it's just a short data snippet you're using it on. And you have a smooth transition from standard public key encryption or hybrid encryption to the post-quantum computing situation. Just add the NADA cap, do everything as before, but just use a NADA cap, and you're set, and your privacy does not depend on the unavailability of quantum computers anymore. You can conserve your privacy into this age. Disadvantage, some added complexity. It's not so bad. I implemented it and it's doable. And again, you have the biggest disadvantage from the fundamentalist approach applies also, but in a reduced severity. If you change the capping algorithm, this would be a cumbersome, complex task. You have this hampered algorithm agility just for the cap. But since the cap is just needed for a very short snippet, even if it's on the whole a several gigabyte file, it doesn't really matter if it's slow, and you can really go to the limit of security margin. You can exceed everything thinkable because speed is not a concern anymore. Therefore, it's not such a grave disadvantage in the evolutionary approach. So, how can we have this smooth migration to NADA-capped ciphers after the advent of practical quantum computing? It would be, I already mentioned that, it would be relatively smooth in both cases for the intrinsic and extrinsic NADA cap. Let's first look at the intrinsic NADA capping, the method where you derive the symmetric key from public key information. What should be done if the NSA all of a sudden has a practical quantum computer? Everyone in the communicating group has to create a new, I called it semi-public private key pair for each communication circle one is taking part in. For example, one for the workplace, one for the family and friends, one for the project group, one for the political circle you're taking part in, whatever. Usually 2 or 3 is sufficient. Since it takes a split second to generate new keys and it's a little more complicated to distribute them, this is easily doable. The basic patterns remains the same. Just that now you have to keep the public key semi-confidential. You share it within the group, but not otherwise. So you have this key pair, private key, and I call it now semi-public key. You discard prior keys that you used with full exposure of the public part from the pre-quantum computing time. They are not safe anymore. They're compromised. You have to discard them. And then you use the intrinsic NADA capping. And this brings in an additional advantage because NADA capping is a free security add-on against conventional eavesdroppers. So you're not only strengthening against quantum computing attacks, you are also strengthening against conventional eavesdroppers. They don't know what they intercept, if they intercept anything. They cannot classify it. They cannot put it in a database. They can just put it in a bucket and have no clue how to attack it. It might even be true random data. They don't know. So we have this private public key. From the semi-public key, we use a key derivation function on the data of the public key. we derive a key for the symmetric data cap, and then we protect the access block in the hybrid cipher file. So it all looks gray, it all looks like noise to the interceptor. We have the commonly plain cipher header that now looks like noise data, random data, and the body of this cipher file is anyhow genuine negligible adversary advantage part. It looks like noise anyway. So how can we achieve the transition for the extrinsic data capping? The communicating group has to meet once, conspiratively, to pass on the secret nada cap password. There's a get together and they tell each other the secret key and share it within the group, and no one should leak the information outside of the group. Key pairs, public-private key pairs that had been used before the advent of quantum computing can continue to be used now. It's no problem. You just use it with an extrinsic nada cap, and still the adversary, who might have been able to calculate the discrete logarithm of your key and calculate your private key, still cannot decrypt because they don't have access to the access block. No access data available. So you share this keyword, and use a strong key derivation function. It takes long, it has a large memory footprint. You derive the symmetric nada cap key and you apply it to the commonly plain cipher header, and now the plain cipher header is also protected and the full cipher file is completely looking like noise. A caveat here is that authentication is no longer secure against external agency for public keys that have been publicly known, that might be known to the aggressor, to the NSA or so. So authentication is broken, but privacy can be retained even if you use the old key pairs. No problem. What changes in principle against the situation we have now? Nada cap usage needs secrets that are group secrets, a group secret. Nowadays we have private information that only the individual has and no one else has to know it, and public information that everybody may know. If you are forced to go into nada capping, or if you want to use nada capping, you additionally need a group secret. You have these members of a circle, project group for example, or your workplace. Each member has a secret, a personal secret as before, the private key of the turquoise member, the private key of the green member, and now you additionally have a group secret. In the intrinsic nada capping, this group secret would be the public key list of all the participants of the group. No one outside of the group should know these. They should be kept secret within the group. It's a group secret, it's all the same, but they all have to have it. Now, if an eavesdropper wants to spy on the group, and if it's an eavesdropper that is acting from far away, for example, the group is existing in Germany and it's the NSA or GCHQ, they can just survey the communication channels. So they may have access to the blue lines. But if you use intrinsic nada capping, they cannot decipher or classify. They don't have any information about the data packets you exchange here. So as long as they don't have a human agent or bribe one member of the group, they are in the dark. they cannot access. If you don't use intrinsic NADA capping but extrinsic NADA capping, then the situation slightly changes. Then the group secret is not the public key list of the members of the group secret is the password. But otherwise it's the same. You have this additional level of group secret. And then you can retain your privacy even in the face of practical quantum computers. Now let's come to a conclusion. We conclude NADA capping offers quantum computing secure encryption, privacy, using today's crypto primitives. The presented solutions, intrinsic and extrinsic NADA capping, cannot offer a solution for authentication to the public. This is what is important in the commercial sector. Since it's important in the commercial sector, they'll come up, the money people will come up with a solution, so it's not our problem. We care about privacy. A NADA cap limits the information accessible to the adversary to minimal information purely external to the cipher file, metadata only, no single bit of information extractable from the cipher data itself. Conventional classification attempts, like what they do in Bluffdale in Utah, let alone cryptanalytic attempts of powerful interceptors, are substantially aggravated, actually made impossible. NADA capping allows for a smooth transition from hybrid encryption as we use it today, which in itself, in the present form, is vulnerable to practical quantum computing, allows a smooth transition to post-quantum computing secure hybrid encryption with the cap. The set of two access concepts, private and fully public, needs to be extended to include a third category, group internal, the group password, or the group secret public key lists. NADA capping can be regarded, we can regard it as a backup method in case the candidates for post-quantum computing asymmetric primitives should fail, be impractical, or not be available in time. So, thank you that you left your attention on this video for such a long time. Those of you who are still here and want to see this NADA capping work and practice, please hang on and watch the second part of this video. I will demonstrate a practical NADA-capped cipher exchange using the tool Academic Signature. So hang on, and thanks for now. Welcome to the second part of the video on the perfect cipher. We are in the practical part, and as announced in the previous part, I'll show you how to produce a negligible adversary advantage cipher using the tool Academic Signature. I already opened and logged into the tool, and I'm demonstrate enciphering this picture. Let me just show you this picture. This is it. This is the American Embassy in Berlin, and inside the red circle there are the probable surveillance electronics equipment with which they survey the phones of all the members of the German parliament. So let's assume we want to encrypt this image using a NADA cap. We pick crypto operations elliptic encrypt. We select a public key from store. We want to send it to the recipient and want to encipher it for the recipient. We select this image as plaintext to encipher. This is it. And we select apply a NADA cap. We could pick some algorithm, I just leave it at Chimera. Cipher file name is suggested this one, and let me just add intrinsic, since this is going to be the intrinsic NADA cap, the one where the cap key is derived from the public key of the recipient. So all we have to do is click Do and Cipher. And now we are asked for the NADA cap keyword. If we leave intrinsic, which we are going to do now, it will use intrinsic NADA capping. So we just do it. That's it, enciphered. And we see that this cipher file appears here in this folder which we are using. Now let's just do it again, and now the extrinsic case. Extrinsic, let's call it the extrinsic cipher. Again, it's Chimera, and we just hit Do and Cipher. And now let's pick a key, embassy. Let's assume our shared NADA cap key is embassy, and now we are going to see a good deal of stretching and sorting in the background that will take a while to derive the NADA cap key. So we are clicking Do Capped Crypt, and now the key derivation function, having a large memory footprint and large time that's necessary, is running in the background. And now we have it enciphered. So let me leave this menu, and now we have these two ciphers. Actually, it would be boring, but we can have a look at it. The extrinsic cipher is just noise. It looks like random numbers. You can give it to any die-harder test of your liking, and it will always tell you it's perfect noise. You can also look at the other one. Same here. So you cannot see anything. No formatting information, nothing. Nada. It's nada kept. Now let's see what happens if we now slip into the skin of the receiver, the recipient, and try to decipher. Let me first get rid of the plain file. And now let's look at the receiver. Now let's assume we are at the receiver side. Let's start with the intrinsic cipher. We got the intrinsic cipher. Then you want to decipher the intrinsic cipher. We select the intrinsic one. And the program already noticed there is no plaintext header. Is it NADA kept? Hint, we must select the key manually. So now what we know is we got it sent from the sender. And the sender knows our recipient key, because it takes part in the communication circle where I am known as the recipient. So I know it's for the recipient, and I select the recipient key. Oh, the recipient key is doing some bookkeeping here, gave some messages and said, no, it's okay. So let me just decipher. It says, appears to have intrinsic NADA cap. It was able to decap using this key, and it regenerated the original picture of the surveillance electronics on top of the American Embassy in Berlin. So this was fairly easy. All you have to know at the recipient side is which key this NADA kept cipher was enciphered to. And since this is from the sender, and you know the sender takes part in the communicating circle where you are known as the recipient, that's it. No problem. So the common saying, this were impossible, is bullshit. Now let's get rid of this one again. And now let's try the extrinsically NADA kept. What was the word? I think embassy was the group secret. So I select the file extrinsic, the one with the extrinsic stuff. This one. Again, I get the hint there is no plain text header. It might be nada kept. Hint, must select key manually. Well, we are the recipient, so I select recipient again this warning, but it accepts the key, and now we decipher. Now it noted that it could not get through with intrinsic nada capping. It couldn't regain a plain access block. So it asks for the nada cap keyword, which was embassy in this case. I hope I capitalized it. Embassy. And I say do kept crypt. Now I have to wait till the full-blown stretching and sorting with a large memory footprint is done. Oops, it failed. Was it written in not capital letters? Do kept crypt. Let's see. And decapping was successful, and the picture of the electronic surveillance equipment on top of the US Embassy in Berlin is regained again. So no practical problem in doing that, and I think there's no reason not to use negligible adversary advantage hybrid ciphers. It's easy and it's practical, as you have seen right now. Thank you for your attention. This short second part of the video on the perfect cipher is done now. You are through, and I thank you for your attention. Bye bye.